One of the things that Luminar AI does very well is to replace a sky. But I've got a rather bland looking sky in a photograph, and I'm wondering, can we do something using the color grading tools inside of Luminar AI to make this photo come alive without replacing the sky? So that's what we're going to take a look at today. Hi, my name is William Beem. I'm a photographer just like you. I want to invite you to come over to the website, williambeem.com. If you go to williambeem.com/courses, I've got a few ebooks there that are free giveaways, and also some Lightroom brushes that you can get for free. And there's a little video course that goes along with that. So williambeem.com, and let's go ahead and take a look at this photograph. This photograph is in Havana. I was there a few years ago with Santa Fe Photographic Workshops. And most of the time when you're in a group like that, you're kind of on the go. You're always looking at something that they're giving you opportunities to take photographs. There wasn't that much time that I could go out and take photographs just for myself. One of those nights that I did have a night to go out, you can see here the sky is absolutely horrid. And quite honestly, I've never really done anything with this photograph before because I looked at it and thought, yeah, that's a throwaway to me. I'm not really in the habit of trying to save photographs. Typically, I think that if you don't get a good photograph in camera, all the post-processing you do to try and save it is usually wasted effort. But I'm curious what we can do with this and what we can do with the sky. So I can tell there is a little bit of a gradient in the sky naturally, and there's a little bit of gradient in the water here. And you can tell that definitely there's some motion. This was part of an HDR bracket. So there was a little bit of shutter lag going on with this when I was taking it on a tripod. And you can also see that with the lights over here. I want to see, is there something we can do with this photograph? So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come over here to Enhance AI. And I usually kind of like go in the middle around 50 or something like that with Accent AI and Sky Enhancer. So right off the bat, we got a little bit. And if we look at our before and after, you can see that's where we were and that's where we are. I like it a little bit. I've got a little bit more separation in the gradient in the sky. There's definitely some color pop inside of the buildings. And these are kind of like faded color buildings, but you know, they've all got a theme. They kind of work together. So I'm going to leave that alone right now. And I think the next thing I want to do, rather than coming down here and working with all these tools, is try working with some local masking. I'm going to bring up a gradient mask, and I'm going to start with the sky over here. Give me that much of a look, and I'm going to pull this down. Doesn't want to cooperate. And if you want to see your mask, hit the slash key, the one next to your shift, and there you can see this is what our mask looks like. So I might pull this down just a little bit further. I want to get a little bit more of the sky with that. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to do a couple things. I'm going to bring up the warmth quite a bit, and you can see how we've kind of got a yellow look here. I'm not thrilled with it, but I'm still going to keep on working. I'm going to bring up my saturation. I'm going to bring up my vibrance, and we've got a bit more warmth almost as if we're looking at a sunset here. So I'm going to bring this mask down a little bit more. And that gives us a change. Now, one thing you might be thinking about is I'm putting that gradient mask on this building. I don't want to block the mask out because this building would be catching whatever sunlight is coming up there. So if I'm doing something that changes the light with the warmth, then that's what I want to do. So the next thing I want to do is add another one. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add, Basic. And I'm going to change this to yet another gradient mask. And now I'm going to pull up from the bottom. So we're going to pull this up here, and I'm going to turn on the mask again so I can see how it's working over the water. And I'm probably going to tilt this just a little bit like that. Pull this down just a little bit. And I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to turn off my mask. I want to warm up the water. So I'm going to bring up this. I'm going to bring up my vibrance and my saturation. Not exactly the same values, but if I've got warmth in the sky, I want to have a little bit of warmth in the water. And you can see we've kind of changed the color here. So if we look at our before and after, that's where we were, and this is where we are now. So it's a starting place, and we've made some changes, but I'm going to go back over here now and take a look at what else we can do. One of the things I think that I like to work with is coming down here to super contrast. And I have this strange little habit. I kind of click in a zigzag pattern between the highlights, midtones, and shadows. And for some reason, I like the way this works. On the midtones contrast, I'm going to click here. There we go. So there's my zigzag. I was kind of getting myself confused there. And the shadows contrast, I'm going to bring up here. Now we're talking. So let me show you before, after, and before and after. I'm really enjoying just the change in color here. We didn't do too much. The sky is still kind of a gradient, but it's not quite as boring. We've got some color popping out of here. Now, do we want to do some more things? Perhaps. We could go into color harmony, and let's say that we want to make this just a little bit more brilliant, and that gives us a really, like a Miami Art Deco kind of color, especially if we add up the warmth. I don't want to do that. What if I bring the brilliance down and the warmth up? And that's a little bit more believable. So I don't know, if I bring the brilliance way up here, that's just like a Miami Vice kind of color scheme to me. And it's interesting. If you want to do like a pop kind of culture work, I think that would be an interesting way to go, but it's not exactly the look I'm wanting here. Let me turn this off. And you can see there's like a subtle change. When I've brought my brilliance down, I've actually kind of muted what I'd already done with the super contrast. And I haven't decided if I really want to keep this or not. I think I'm going to leave the brilliance alone and just keep the warmth a little bit. We could do some more with color balance, with color contrast. I kind of like to see what happens with color contrast. And there, I'm going to bring this down to maybe about 20. And let's turn that off. And you can see that it really affects the sky. And even these windows over here, you can see the change. I'm going to turn it off. So it brings out the blue, it brings out the color contrast in those windows. And I'm kind of enjoying that. We could really screw things up by changing the hue. As I drag this across, you can see in the photograph how it's really changing, like particularly on this green over here. And it depends on where I am on the hue that things come over and really start to mess things up or enhance them to a level that you like. Never be afraid to play with something. You don't have to keep it. And if you really want that orange creamsicle look in the sky, we could leave it right there. And if you want to make it a pop Miami thing, you can drag this all the way over here. I think that's almost apocalyptic. So we're going to bring this back down to about 18 to 20. And I think I'm going to leave the hue right about there because I like a little bit of the cream look inside of the sky. And I like what it did with this blue building over here. So let's go back to our before and after. So this is the photo we started with. Bland, dull, kind of gray all over. And now we've got a pop of color coming out of it. You can see that this is intended to be a sunset photo because of the layers in the sky, because of the warmth in here. And we don't see the sun in here. We could try and put a sun in, but I'm looking at the direction of the light. You can see that it's coming flat on this building, but there's shadow over here, which tells me that it's off the camera frame back here. You can see it as well. I don't know if we put a sun in there, if that's really going to work for us or not. But again, I said, never be afraid to play. So we're going to take this little dot, and we're going to drag it off screen. And you know what? I'm kind of digging that. If I turn this off, it goes away. If I turn it on, you can see the sun rays kind of subtle. And I want to bring the amount down, I think maybe about 15. And I don't have to worry about the sun radius. If I wanted to bring the glow up, you can see it's kind of glowing in here. If I wanted to bring that down to a smaller radius of the sun, I can do that. And maybe not quite so much of a glow amount. And just this little bit right here coming in kind of hints to you that there's a sun coming from this direction. So we could play more with this, but honestly, I'm thinking I'm going to leave it right there. I'm actually kind of glad that I played with the sun. We could play with the sun warmth a little bit. I want to do that. And maybe warm up the sun rays. There's one last thing that I want to do with this photo, and that's to come up here to landscape and see what happens if I bring up golden hour. And there we've got way too much, but let's bring this one also back down, maybe about between 15 and 20. And I'm trying to think. This is without the golden hour. And this is with. I think we probably could have used golden hour a bit more if we hadn't done some of the color grading that we did with color harmony. But it's just an interesting looking sky. And the blue and the warmth here, and then the graduation that we've got over here. It's something different besides just going off and replacing the sky with the sky that maybe does or doesn't match. There is kind of a problem when you replace the sky, and that goes again with the direction of the light. On this one, you can see the light direction is coming over here. It's hitting this part of the building, and then we've got shadow over here. It's not able to come around. The front of these buildings over here also kind of have, there are sections where there's light on the side, but the front of it is kind of in shadow. And I think I'm going to leave it right there. Now, what we were missing with this photo, and one of the reasons why I haven't really done anything with it, is to me, nothing truly draws your eye. I'm really looking at the sky more than anything else. We could have come down here and maybe done a little bit of dramatic. So let's bring this up to maybe 18. And another thing we could have done is maybe going into some matte. I'm using small amounts here. The idea of the matting is you're kind of taking away some of the sharpness of the color. So you can see what a dramatic difference it made in the sky. Let me turn this off. And you can see that creaminess kind of boiled down to something a little bit more muted after we used both dramatic and then now we turn on the matte, and it kind of takes that away. So the idea with a matte is it almost looks like an old postcard. I'm not going to work with that. I'm going to turn that off. And I come over here to dramatic. If I turn that off, you can see how that's affecting the colors. So this is before I turn on dramatic, and then once I do turn on dramatic and I have the amount at about 18, it kind of changes to a bit more of a muted look. And I think I'm actually going to leave that there. We could still do some brightness and saturation, but I'm going to leave that alone because we've already kind of hit those with some of the other tools. I don't think a glow would look very good here, or a mystical. You could do a film grain if you kind of wanted to replicate that old, like 1950s postcard look. But I think what we're going to do is leave this alone. We could have done maybe a little bit of dodging and burning in some places. We could add a little bit of a vignette. And let's say that we say our subject is right around in this area. I like doing these really strong vignettes to see where it is, and then maybe do a little inner light. We'll change the roundness. Right in there, we'll bring the size down quite a bit more. And now I'm going to bring this amount back up to where you don't really perceive it. So that's going to be around 35 in my opinion. I'm going to turn this off and then back on. And you can see there's just a touch more brightness in there. And I don't want to knock you over the head with a vignette. I just want to draw your eye towards these buildings, and we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for joining me. I just wanted to take a look at what can we do with skies or a travel scene without replacing the sky. Sometimes you get a bland, boring sky, and yes, you can replace it, but that can also cause problems of its own if there's issues with masking, or maybe the colors just don't match. The one thing about this sky, I knew that whatever we did, the colors were still going to match the scene. We're simply augmenting the colors rather than replacing them with a different sky. And that's why I also did something with the ocean in front. Not that it's not going to be blue water, but it needs to reflect whatever we did to the sky. And so I made those changes down below. If you like this video, please go ahead, click like. That tells YouTube if we did something right, and they will share this with more people. Click subscribe, and then hit that bell notification icon if you'd like to see some more videos, tutorials on Luminar and other post-processing tools. And don't forget, go to williambeem.com/courses. I'll make sure there's a link in the description below, and you can see some of the things that I have available for free. Thanks so much. I'll see you again in the next video.